voice to welcome all of us back to this third meeting of the third session of the life of the Parliament that you preside over. Speaker, I want to believe that colleagues have come back refreshed to brace themselves up and indeed fully commit and submit themselves to the task ahead of all of us. Mr. Speaker, but before I proceed, I think it's important to respond to the fact that, yes, the limited registration that we had came with its own challenges that we need to deal with, especially because over the past 2 years, in the lead up to this year, the limited registration had not happened. So we had an accumulation of people who were otherwise due for registration. However, let it be restated that no limited registration in this country has happened in all the polling stations. Never once. Never once have we witnessed that. So the impression should not be created. The impression should not be created that the Electoral Commission departed from what ought to have been done or what has been happening always. That is palpable untruth. That is palpable untruth. Mr. Speaker, as for the budget statement, I believe we will all witness what we need to witness. And I believe since this government assumed the reins of governance, nothing but the truth has ever been told to this country. And indeed, the truth will be told to this country. And I believe that people will see what steps that government has been taking to really reposition this country. Mr. Speaker, while we were on recess, a few other things happened. The Parliament of Ghana held the Nkommo Wo Ho Parliamentary Conference. It was the first time since Ghana's independence that our Parliament was hosting the conference of the Nkommo Wo Ho Parliamentary Association. Mr. Speaker, you know, over 700 delegates made up of members of parliament and parliamentary staff attended the conference. The figure 700 does not include accompanying spouses. The Speaker, the success story of the conference in Ghana is still being told, and we must commend the planning committee for the detailed and flawless organization of the conference. The Speaker, the leadership of the House, led by your good self, Right Honorable Alban Suman Kingsford Bagby, must be commended for the effective supervision of the processes and procedures. Mr. Speaker, we must spare time to acknowledge and show appreciation to His Excellency, the President, for not only gracing the opening of the conference with his presence, but setting the tone for the conference with his inaugural statement and treating guests to a sumptuous dinner. Mr. Speaker, I believe I cannot also leave out for commendation with respect to the holding of this conference in Ghana, the former Speaker of Parliament, Speaker Michael Quay, the former leader of the minority, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, the clerk to Parliament, and my humble self for positioning Ghana to assume this responsibility. That was in Uganda some 4 years ago. The Speaker, I guess while we're at it, and because some of the issues that came to be discussed are matters that have also been handled by former leaders of this House. The Honorable Nkommo, when he served as the majority leader, the Honorable Cletus Abuka, when he also served as the majority leader, and Papa Nkommo. All these matters, the central matter that came to be discussed, that is in respect of the status of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, have been dealt with by these former leaders. And Mr. Speaker, as I said, I must cite them for commendation. The Speaker, a concurrent to the Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference was the meeting of the ECOWAS Parliament that held at Winneba in the Central Region at the instance of the Deputy Majority Leader, Honorable Afenyo Maki, who is the leader of the representatives from Ghana. Mr. Speaker, the third major parliamentary event that held during the recess is the Inter-Parliamentary Union, the annual general meeting of the Inter-Parliamentary Union that held in Luanda, Angola. The meeting just concluded over the immediate past weekend. It is the late holding of the IPU, that is the World Assembly of Parliaments, which has caused the late resumption of Parliament on this 31st day of October. The Speaker, the meetings of the IPU, the October meetings, usually hold in the last week of September or the first week of October. This year's meeting spanned the 3rd and 4th weeks of October, and hence causing this unprecedented late resumption of the House. The Speaker, the House expects to be served with reports from these three events. There's the CPC, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference, the ECOWAS Parliamentary Delocalized Plenary Meeting in Winneba, Ghana, and the IPU Conference in Angola. The Speaker, however, for the IPU, a major point came to be restated. And the point is that by 2040, all parliaments must have achieved gender parity in their membership. The Speaker, today the global average of female members of parliament in parliament is 26%. 26%. Ghana has just over 14% of the membership comprising women, several ranks below the global average. How, as a nation, are we preparing to arrive at that destination, Speaker? The Speaker, the IPU insists that 17 years from now, parliaments that have not been able to meet that benchmark would be reduced to observer status at the IPU meetings. We need to relook at our constitution again in this regard, since the first past the post regime prescribed by the constitution cannot ferry us to the destination of gender parity in 17 years. The Speaker, whilst on recess, the nation has experienced the spilling of the impounded water from the Akosombo Dam on account of the massive rainfall that the country has experienced this year. The Speaker, the rains were going to positively impact our domestic food production and thereby bring down food inflation. The flooding may have a debilitating impact on crop harvest. Unfortunately, one would want to hope that it does not hugely impact the nation's food security. There are those who have lost property, as the minority leader has alluded to, those of them who have lost houses, livestock, money, vehicles, and even lives. Mr. Speaker, if there's anything that the Parliament of this country, the people's representatives, could do to demonstrate our concern, it is rise to the occasion. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, the House may have to invite the VRA to brief us on the situation relating to the spillage and all other connected matters. Mr. Speaker, I believe the Minister responsible for water resources and indeed energy as well may have to also come along. I've heard about some comments that have been made by some colleague members of Parliament. It is scary, Mr. Speaker, the extent some Ghanaians, including some MPs, go to politicize every single event in this country. As MPs, one of our core responsibilities is to inform and by that educate the citizenry. The education must be done in sincerity and truthfulness. Nothing short of that. We should educate the people in order for them to make informed choices. Speaker, serving citizens with propaganda is corruption of the mind. Mr. Speaker, this meeting is basically a budget meeting. In view of the late commencement of the third meeting, which shall last for only 8 weeks, the House may not have the luxury of time. Accordingly, ministers, committee leadership, especially chairpersons, shall have to ensure efficient and effective utilization of the limited time at our disposal for the conduct of business, which will lead to the consideration and passage of the Appropriations Act on or before December 22nd, 2023. Mr. Speaker, whilst we are away, some high-profile personalities pass on to eternity. Felix Ousho-Japan, a former member of Parliament for Achim-Swedru and former majority leader. He was in Parliament for 3 terms, from 1997 to 2008. He was a former minister responsible for energy as well. Speaker, the Honorable E.T. Mensah, former Accra Mayor, former MP for Ningo Pram for 6 consecutive times. Mr. Speaker, he was also a former Minister for Youth and Sports, former Chief Whip, former Minister. Mr. Speaker, when you left with him, I think he became the Minister for, was it? No, he didn't go back to Youth and Sports. Western Housing. And Mr. Speaker, when he returned to the House, he came alongside your good self in the club of the 3 wise men. Mr. Speaker, the House may, in the fullness of time, eulogize these stalwarts, former compatriots. The third person is a former First Lady of a regime in the Fourth Republic, Mrs. Theresa Kufuor, who was the wife of former President Kufuor. A very self-disciplined First Lady she was. Now, the funeral for Mrs. Kufuor shall hold on the 16th of November at the forecourt of the State House. I'm reliably informed. A fitting tribute shall be paid at the appropriate time, possibly next week. Mr. Speaker, the meeting undoubtedly is going to be a very crowded one, and accordingly, I invite all of us to rise up and roll up our sleeves to the task ahead. MPs, ministers, committee chairs, ranking members, committee clerks, table officers, and above all, the media, let us all resolve to do what is right and appropriate in the service of God and country.